Fa to now come and bring our readings this morning. Thank you, Fa.
So the first reading comes from Amos chapter 8 verses 4 to 7. Hear this, you that tremble on the needy, and bring to ruin the poor of the land, saying, when will the new moon be over, so that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath, so that we may offer wheat for sale? We will make the ephah small and the shekel great, and practice deceit with false balances, buying the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, and selling the sweepings of the wheat. The Lord has sworn by the pride of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their deeds. Second reading comes from Luke chapter 10 verses 38 to 42. Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. Your word, O Lord, is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path.
Thank you, Fa. Did people read my news and notes intro before walking into the room today? Did you see what? Okay, so I just thought maybe I had better explain what mansplaining means.
Maybe that's the problem.
Because mansplaining is when men of wisdom and knowledge. Oh, you see, you already know that. Is that right? Sorry, I don't need to go any further. Look, I'm not going to be doing any mansplaining this morning, I hope. I always try to avoid mansplaining. It's In my last placement, Christmas Day became a little bit of a dud where I was. We were getting about 12 people to worship on a Sunday morning, on Christmas morning to worship, and we dissolved our Christmas lunch because it had a whole bunch of problems around it. And in doing all that, and in becoming part of Wayside, I decided to lead us into starting again a Christmas Day lunch in Bondi. And rather than run it in the chapel, we formed a partnership with the Bondi Beach Surf Club. Now, if any of you have seen it all, Bondi Rescue on TV, you'll know, and I think they have done a Christmas edition, and you'll know that Bondi Beach is generally pretty full on Christmas Day. And it was a boon for us. Like our Sunday morning, the Christmas worship went from up to about 85 people, and I took photos just to make sure that I wasn't imagining things. And our Christmas lunch had about 150 or more people coming to it, and then COVID hit. But the phenomena that happened every year was of course that providing a lunch for 150 people required volunteers. And so through the Wayside volunteering system, our volunteering slots would open up with all the different tasks and jobs would open up, and at the beginning of December. And within about an hour, all the spots were filled by our regular volunteers. And then my phone would start to run hot. I'd get about 5 calls a week leading into Christmas from people, and the call went something along these lines. I'm going to be spending Christmas Day on my own. I want to do something. I want to help. Can I come and volunteer? Lovely gesture. My response would be this. Look, I'm really sorry. Our volunteering spots for all the official tasks have all been allocated. Like our regular volunteers have taken them, filled them up. I'll tell you something though. We have a gap. We can put food. We can provide a table. We can provide cutlery. We can provide all the setting. We can put food on the table. But the one thing that we need help in doing is turning that food into a meal. Is turning that food on the table into hospitality. What we need is people who will come with a gracious and generous spirit to give of themselves. To come and sit at a table and share on Christmas Day with people who are at their most lonely. To share with people who are at their most difficult time. Actually, what we really need is for you to acknowledge, I didn't say this on the phone, but what I really need you to do is acknowledge your own need for company on Christmas Day and your own need for community, and to recognise that this is a communal, joint, bridge-building event. And that the best thing you can do is bring yourself. We can provide the eating. What we can't do very well is the meeting. The phone at the other end would often go a bit quiet. And then I'd get a response, but I really want to do something. People very rarely ever took up my invitation. I do remember one family of 5 who came one day, that they were visiting from the country, and they came and they were there from the start, and they were there until every last thing was packed back on the truck to go back up to the chapel. And what a gift they were. And there were other people who did too. They weren't the only ones. There were other people who came as well, who understood the gift that they could be by giving of themselves, of their time, of their care, of their compassion. The thing is, and the thing that would be really hard to lose in our passage today, having read it, is that we need both. This isn't a one or the other. This isn't a dichotomous dynamic where we either need workers or we need meters. It would be easy to read the passage in that way. And it would be really easy to preach from that space and tell everyone we have to be Marys. To tell everybody we have to be people who are sitting at the feet of Jesus and listening and sharing. That would be a really easy space to preach from. Of course, we all know that would be a dangerous and stupid place to preach from, because our church is made up of many people, many gifts, many talents, and we want to celebrate all gifts of all people. And apart from that, I'm not even really sure if that's what the passage is saying. In our passage today, Jesus is in the home of Martha. It says it's her home. It says that she has a sister called Mary, who I gather might have her own home and is visiting. Just to join a few dots, just in case you haven't done so, it's quite. When you read the book of John, what we pick up is that Mary and Martha are also the sisters of Lazarus, who Jesus raises from the dead. So these are people that Jesus knows really, really well. The other point I want to point out here is that Jesus does something in this passage. Just in case you're reading this, and I get it. If you're a woman and here we go again, it's reinforced that women do all the work around the home. There's actually something going on in this passage which is quite countercultural for Jesus' time. And that is that Jesus takes up a teaching moment. In other words, it's a space where everyone in the three of them are all learning. They're all, well, Jesus is teaching, but it's like in Jesus' time, most disciples were men. Teaching was something that was done with men. And then men went away and taught their wives in private, or the women of their household in private. But what's going on in this interaction is that Jesus is seeing these two disciples of his, the two female disciples, of people of value. I also want to point out that I think Jesus, it would be easy to say that Jesus is actually, it would be easy to say that Jesus takes this moment to teach us that Mary is right and Martha is wrong. That Mary is doing the work of hospitality and Mary's just doing the work. Martha's just doing the work, and Mary's doing the better work of hospitality. But I want to point out that Jesus gets drawn into this tension. There are times when Jesus wants to teach people because he actually wants to intervene in what's going on. But this is one where Jesus gets drawn into it. Martha actually draws Jesus aside and gives him a mouthful. Tell her, did you pick that up in the passage? Like Martha's the one who stands Jesus up and says, this isn't right. I'm doing all the work. So the point I'm trying to make through that is that I rather suspect that this scene would have just gone on. This part of the story would probably not be in our gospel if Martha hadn't confronted Jesus. That in other words, both of these activities are worthwhile. The work of making a place hospitable and the act of meeting are both needed and both worthwhile. Can you hear what I'm saying in that? That we need both. And I think Jesus probably knew that. And he gets drawn into an argument that he probably didn't want to be part of. Because it's not him that intervenes. It's Martha who draws him into it. And I think that's a dynamic that we don't often pick up out of this passage. But I want to say a bit more about this because I don't think the passage really is about who's doing the better work. The housework, the tasks, that kind of stuff versus the being the hospitable, the greeting of the guest. The word distracted, which is how we had it twice in our reading today. That's how it got translated into English. That word came up twice today in our passage of scripture. And it's an interesting word because the first time it comes up in the passage where it's actually the author. It's the author of Luke who says Martha was distracted. Now, the word in the Greek, as the author gives it to us, is that she's pulled about. Her focus is torn in all sorts of different directions. That's what we've ended up with as distracted. In other words, she's not present at all. She's not present at all. All of her energy is going into tasks and jobs and work. And that's what Jesus picks up on. It's not that she's doing the wrong thing. It's just that she's allowing what has to be done in her mind. And let's face it, we all know Marthas. There are people in our lives who know what has to be done and the right way to do it. And it actually creates a space of unmeeting. It creates a tension. when you're unable, when you're so distracted that you can't see and meet those who are in your presence. That's what Jesus is addressing here. He's not saying she's wrong for doing the work. He's saying to her, your mind is in 1,000 different spaces. And I'm not getting to meet you in your own home. The second time the word distracted comes up in the English translation as we read it today, the Greek word actually means turbid. I'm sure someone will be able to tell me what turbid means. Can anyone tell me what turbid means? Cloudy, that's right, opaque, cloudy, not clear. It says, in our English translation, it came up as worried and distracted. In other words, Jesus is pointing out, it's confused is another way of seeing it. So again, it reinforces that what Jesus is saying to her, it's not that you're doing the wrong thing, it's just that being so task-orientated on little things is actually clouding you from seeing and meeting. That's what he picks up on. Now, I guess in some ways our English translation is a little unhelpful in another part, in the last line, because what we got was that Mary has chosen the better part. And actually, probably closer to the Greek is what is said is that Mary has chosen a good thing. So the point I'm trying to make through all this is that if you feel like your life, in the life of our church congregation or life around home is really task orientated, or that you're carrying a greater burden of the weight of jobs and tasks, I just want to give you a word of, I guess, encouragement to say, yes, we need all the gifts that come, the many hands, all that kind of stuff. And what today's passage is hopefully drawing us into this space of remembering, though, that we do what we do to meet people. Let's not ever lose sight of the fact that when we've done a little bit of shifting with ends meet, for instance, and it's part of when Sandra and I sat down to talk about this a year ago. One of the things we both valued was the idea that people who are serving from the kitchen would also come and share in the meal around the table. And I'm aware too that there's a work that goes on at the same sort of thing at Opshop, the same sort of thing at Living English. There are times when we need to do the tasks, but let's not ever let that take away from our desire to meet. Let's not be torn. Let's not be distracted. Today's passage of Scripture leads me into this space where I just want to talk a little bit about how do we avoid being distracted? What are some little pointers that might help us to avoid being distracted? Whenever we feel ourselves angry about the tasks, whenever we feel ourselves angry about or frustrated, or whenever we can feel a tension growing within us about what's not being done, I personally always find, and it doesn't necessarily come straight from the passage today, but for myself, a good starting point is gratitude. I think gratitude is a good antidote to distraction. Rather than having our mind set on what needs to be corrected and who needs to be fixed up to get their thinking straight about what needs to be done, I think a good antidote to distraction, to being torn about by that, is gratitude. Gratitude for God's goodness. Gratitude for the provisions of God in our life. Gratitude for the people around us that we get to meet. Another, I think for me coming out of the passage, to avoid distraction is just to refocus. Because distraction is about a loss of focus. It's about being torn by the little things. As I shared in my news and notes summary this week, the book of Amos is actually paired alongside some of our readings for the next few weeks. And I love the book of Amos. If ever you want to kick in the pants about what's important to God, then go and have a look at the book of Amos. If you ever want to be refocused about where God gets angry, about what gets God's ire up, have a look at the book of Amos. But it might be something else other than the book of Amos. It might be more than injustice. It might be for you. You might hear God's voice of refocus around it could be around anything. It could be around your own sense of discipleship and service. It could be around courage. It could be around love or compassion. It could be around inclusion. I don't know how God speaks to you. But my encouragement to you in times of distraction is to try and stop and listen for the word of God, calling you, speaking to you. And the third thing I think I would want to say is being open and being prepared to recalibrate your life. If you're a little out of focus, here's the opportunity. Anyone who's, I know a lot of us wear glasses, here's your chance to sit in the optometrist chair and let God work with the instruments to get your eyesight focused. Recalibrate and be prepared to act and live in that space. So in summary today, what I want to say to us is just be a Martha. Be a Martha. Be prepared to give of yourself, of your gifts and your skills and your talents. Be a Martha. We need Marthas. We need people who are prepared to commit in that kind of way. I also want to encourage you that the other good path is to be a Mary. Be prepared to give of yourself, to meet, to share of who you are. To be prepared to listen as others share who they are. That's where community is formed. Thirdly, if you can, be a Mary and a Martha mixed into one. Do both. And the last thing I want to say is this, is let's be focused on who and what God is calling and speaking to us to be. Let's not be torn, let's not be distracted, let's not be worried, let's not sweat the little stuff. Let's be open to being focused on what God is speaking to us and who God is calling us to be. Because friends, out of the passage today comes this last line, because that will never be taken away from us. That's what will never be taken away from us. Amen. As we